please do pop it in the chat. And if it's directed to any one person, then pop their name in too. And we're going to go on to the Q&A session. What was the name of the soil conditioner, John, that you mentioned? I asked you just quickly.
The soil conditioner is the castings from the wormery. So it's basically worm poo. And then also you get the liquid gold, which is the juices that run out as well, and you can collect them. If you just search online for wormeries, you can get DIY wormeries, or as I say, you can buy commercial ones. But it's just a really cool way to use up any of your food scraps and turn that into product that you can put direct into your garden for free.
That sounds brilliant. Great. Okay, so I'm going to hand us over to Adam, who's been collating all your questions. Adam, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, actually, make sure everybody you have a look at the chat, because there's been some nice words going on in the chat, and nice things being said, and some information being shared. I've got a few questions that I've copied it from the chat and pasted into a Word document so I don't lose track of them. So I think what we'll do is we'll start going through them in the order that they came, and I'll try and keep an eye on the chat as it's happening now, because I imagine some other questions will come up. But so we'll just see how this goes. The first question actually was from Rob Mackay, but I think Rob has gone. In the chat, he says he's gone. So we'll just give Rob. We'll just wait for a second to see if Rob is still there. But he was asking. I'll ask the question anyway, because it sounds like quite an interesting question from Rob Mackay. It was right at the start, okay? So it was when Neil was speaking, and he was asking, he said, there's a proliferation of mountain bike trails over Benachie. Do you license these, or is it a free-for-all?
Yeah, what we're doing is we're working with several different groups to try and find out where things are going. So under the Scottish Outdoor Access Code, you can ride your bike anywhere as long as it's done responsibly. If it's causing a lot of erosion, you could argue that that wasn't responsible. What you're not allowed to do is build features. So if you're going in with spades and changing the ground or cutting trees, that's illegal. But in practice, because we manage a vast area of land and we haven't got very many staff, we struggle to keep on top of these things. So we're trying to work more with groups. So we're working with Aberdeenshire Trail Association. And at the moment, the Baileys of Benachie have got a project that they've got funding for to try and look at what trails are actually on Benachie. And that's happening right now. They're kind of trying to get stuff mapped so that we've got a better idea of what's there. And then we will have to make some sort of management decision about them. In general, if it's not got any built features and it's not causing an immediate safety issue and it's not particularly adversely affecting any protected species, we'll probably just have a look at them and ignore them and then come back once in a while and just see if they've changed. If there's serious building of jumps and stuff and we feel that it's unsafe, we'll try and knock them down and we'll put up signage to say we have removed these because, and very occasionally we'll kind of adopt trails and make them slightly more formal, but we're trying not to do that too much because we're trying to manage a huge amount of land. But it is an ongoing issue and it's quite divisive. Some people really feel that these trails are starting to impact on the wildlife and the nature and destroy the peace of the place. And other people feel that they're just really good for people getting out and getting a bit of exercise and feeling that they're out in the countryside.
Okay, now if Rob was here, I'm sure it'd be, thank you for your answer to his question. The next question comes from John, our speaker just now, but he was saying to Gareth, he was asking Gareth if he knows about tiny forest movement. So John, you can't just put that into the chat and get away with it. Tell us what you mean by tiny forest, the tiny forest movement.
So it's this, I can't remember the name of the organization, perhaps. I think I seen Alan comment on that a while ago on Facebook. But it's basically an organisation, and it puts a lot of native trees into one space. And by doing this, they're basically trying to carbon capture whilst given a habitat, and then that in turn gives a chance for social science to come in, where you have these people from schools or other local organisations that take responsibility, have a look and see what's happening over time there in terms of species moving into that area. And it's just trying to make use of a disused piece of land into a bit of a feature that also is then helping to mitigate climate change.
Okay.
I actually think it's something that DCICAN are looking at quite keenly at the moment. It's having quite a renaissance, and there's a lot of groups looking at this kind of miniature forests.
Okay, then the next question was actually from me. It was whilst Alan was speaking. He was talking about climbing trees. I have to say, actually, it's one of my favorite things I remember as a kid, climbing trees. I don't do it as an adult, and but it's partly because I don't see that many trees that are climbable. But maybe I'm just being blind. I do spend a lot of time in trees, but I asked which species of tree were good, and both Gareth and Corinne gave me some good answers. So I think we can move on from that one, unless anyone really has something else to add that's not in the chat on that tree climbing.
My kids love yew trees, but they're really quite poisonous. There's some really good ones in Drum to climb. That's our favourite place to climb trees, is Drum.
So the next question we have is from Richard. Richard, are you there? Richard Kai.
Yes, I am. Right, there we are. Thank you. Yes, I live in Torry, and we don't have a lot of green space. And there are proposals to turn our beloved green space of St. Fittick's Park into an industrial estate. It's an award-winning wetlands. There's a community forest there, but because it's beside the new harbour, there are plans to convert that into an industrial estate. So can I ask the panel, what do they think of the proposals?
So who wants to take that on? Alan.
Yeah, I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and I mind when that space was just all mown grass and a kind of open ditch, industrial burn going through it. And the transformation, I was involved in planting the trees originally. The transformation is incredible. And you know, Torry puts up with so much. It's got the kind of fish factories and the sewage works and the industrial estates, and there's that one wee jewel now, which is absolutely wonderful the way it's developed. And the idea that would be built over for an estate for cruise ships coming in is, well, it brings the idea of environmental justice to mind, which I think you should think about more.
I probably Neil and Gareth don't know so much about this thing, do you?
No, I'm afraid I'm not familiar with it. But in terms of from a legislative point of view, I'm afraid there's little that we could do. Planning legislation trumps forestry legislation if there's approved planning permission. So I'm afraid there's, certainly from our perspective, there's not a lot we would be able to do in that scenario anyway. You'd have to make your representations to your local authority.
Yeah, it's interesting. For Aberdeen Climate Action, we did planning. It was our last climate cafe, and this came up as well. And the way planning works was very clearly laid out to us, and the challenges that trying to overturn some of it was planned. But I think there'll be more on this story, won't there? Richard. Oh no,
In
John.
fact, actually, just to say something about that, we are having Aberdeen Climate Action and Hope for the Future are going to have an event in April. We're thinking it's going to be on the 22nd of April. it's before the May elections on community green spaces and their protection, and asks for MSPs and MPs, and we've got quite a few MPs and MSPs coming. And one of the case studies that we will be looking at and we'll be discussing there will be St. Fittick's and the energy transition zone.
Okay, John, did you want to say anything on this subject?
No, I'd just like to add that I do think it's a massive shame, especially when we know the consequences of cruise ships, you know, to rip up a whole area that's providing niches everywhere is just a terrible loss and a shame to the community and to the inhabitants of it.
Can I just clarify, it won't be cruise ships, it's actually the energy transition zones. What we're looking at there is activities associated with transitioning from oil and gas to renewables, so hydrogen, wind farms, etc. So that's what it's supposed to be about.
All right, super sorry, I must have missed that
Okay.
just then.
Just to clarify.
But yeah, I guess then if it is going to something positive for a transition of energy, then you do have to then find the balance again of restoring that, which I guess, yeah, going back into the planning is very vital.
Richard, do you want to come back?
Yes, proposal at the moment, but it seems to have got Aberdeen Harbour behind it, because it's more business for the harbour, the bigger the energy zone, and so it's a sort of vicious circle. If you read the Aberdeen Harbour Master Plan 2020, then proposed land for expansion also includes Balnagas Golf Course, because Aberdeen Harbour actually own that peninsula towards the lighthouse where the golf course is. So perhaps we could mobilise the golfers as well to join the plans. But there is an active group who are campaigning against the proposal. So if anybody wants to look at stfittickstory.com, then there's a lot more detail there. I'll put that up in the chat.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks very much. And Alison, Corinne has asked if you could put into the chat the details of that event, if we know when it is.
Well, I haven't got all the details yet, Corinne. So what we'll do is I'll put it up on the Aberdeen Climate Action Facebook page as soon as we know what's happening about that. But what
You've muted yourself.
didn't mean to do that.
And again.
You know what it is? It's because I'm trying to put something in the chat, and every time I do, it's obviously like a keyboard shortcut, which isn't so much of a shortcut. I'm putting in the chat just now, and I won't press anything. The link to the local development plan. Because actually, Clary, I'm seeing what you're saying about 24 acres of land here in Cults, and that's where I live too. And I'm thinking I know which area you are, but it must have sneaked past me. It is a very, very hot topic. If you are interested, what I advise you to do is go and look on our YouTube channel, Aberdeen Climate Action, and look at the planning talks from last week. Or was it? No, it was the start of the month anyway. I think it was the 4th or the 6th of this, whatever the first Tuesday was of this month. And there are some excellent talks there. And Claire from Planning Democracy is really, really good. And if you have any questions about your local area and planning, they're the people to go to, Planning Democracy. And I'll put a link to them as well in the chat. But it is a really emotive subject, this. Anyway, I'm going to pass you back to Adam.
Great. Actually, Alison, you are the next person to ask a question, because you've got a question about spent beans.
Yay. Yeah, because I've been trying to use spent coffee beans, but I'm not entirely sure what the best ratio is. So what is the best ratio? And I'm going to sneak another little question in. I know I'm maybe a bit late, but I want to get some raspberry canes that will give me raspberries like later on in the season. So what is your advice about that? Any of you guys?
So the composting question for the beans is basically you've really got to get your ratios correct, and it depends what you're growing as well, and also what your composting system is. basically we have the 3 bays at the moment. We're going to extend them out because we're going to have a quick turnover with future projects and stuff. But we get a delivery of up to 5 kilogram of kilo every week. And that goes straight in, but with a lot of cardboard. So we've got a lot of carbon in there because your beans, your spent coffee grains are, they say roughly around about 6.5 pH. So it's not that far off neutral. So it won't completely acidify your soil, but you've just got to make sure that you do have a lot of dry material in there with it just to reduce the nitrogen levels as well, because sometimes, depending on what you're planting, too much nitrogen can be really harmful and stifle growth.
And raspberries?
Can I answer about raspberries?
Yeah, go on.
You do get varieties of raspberries called autumn fruiting raspberries, things like Autumn Bliss. So go for one of those, and you have to manage them differently. Usually raspberries canes grow one year and fruit the next year. So when you cut out the old canes, you must make sure you leave the canes from the year before. With autumn fruiting ones, they're very vigorous. They grow and they fruit in the same year. So once they've fruited, you cut them down entirely, and then they'll grow up the next year.
Okay. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question. Is Michelle there? Because Michelle has got a question for Forestry Scotland, for Gareth, I guess. Michelle, are you there? Maybe Michelle's not there. I'll read out Michelle's question. It says, for Forestry Scotland, is there any intent to try to set up more diverse forests that support a wider variety of trees and are more beneficial for wildlife instead of mono forests that are almost void of life? I guess the answer is yes, but that's the short answer. Gareth.
So it's a complicated subject, I suppose. The differences here. So we have what's called the UK Forestry Standard, which is a standard that applies to all new forestry and all existing forestry and how it's managed, the intention of which is to ensure that it's done sustainably, and certainly it's trying to move what are monoculture, the sort of traditional monoculture, into a slightly more diverse position. We have strict criteria for new woodlands that are being planted. The grant, if people want grant, they have to meet specific criteria in terms of what the diversity of woodland. We'll have maximum allowable percentages of certain species, but it really comes down to the landowner and their objectives. And while we can use grants to incentivize people to do things slightly differently, it is down to the owner's objectives. If somebody would like to, if their primary goal is to make money and they want to, and that's what they want to do, then planting a Sitka spruce block is usually the most effective way to do that. So totally understand it. This can be a very emotive subject as well, and a lot of people don't like the sort of monoculture crops. And as I say, we are moving away from that in terms of maximum allowable percentages, but I don't think it'll necessarily ever go away. So hopefully that answers the question.
I don't think we'll know if it answers the question because Michelle isn't here. I just checked on the participants list. I think, unless I'm wrong, Michelle, are you there? No, I think Michelle's left us.
If I can cut in on that, one of the things we've been doing in the Forestry Commission, Forest Enterprise side of things, and now Forestry and Land Scotland, is looking at bits of forest that are either difficult to harvest or difficult to work with machinery without chewing up the ground or polluting burns. And we've done a lot of small areas of planting of native woodlands along streams and burns. And what that does is it increases the diversity and it doesn't lose you very much productive area. it also makes it easier to stop churning up silt and getting it into waterways. And because the streams all connect up, it builds a network of little bits of native woodland which are connected to each other, which is much more effective for wildlife than planting the same area as little patches of woodland that are distinct. And I know that quite a lot of the other estates around the place have started doing the same things for the same reason. But because we're harvesting stuff that was planted in the 1970s, it takes a long time for the changes to become very obvious.
Okay, I think that's great. I've only got one more question on my sort of clearly recognisable as a question, and this is from Clary. Alison's already alluded to it, but Clary, are you there? Do you want to ask your question? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, hello. Hi. So there's 24 acres of land here in Cults. And it was Greenbelt, and it actually got approved last minute in the council. And it's actually a baby forest, I think. It's got a lot of young trees. And it's used by the community, like dog walkers and families and things, because it's along the railway line. And I was just wondering if you've got any advice for raising awareness of this, because I think not many people know about it. And if there's perhaps like a case against development, because there's also a lot of wildlife there.
I don't know if everyone caught that. The question's on the chat, but Clara, you broke up a tiny bit. But this is a similar thing. 24 acres of land has been Greenbelt. It's been brought into planning, but is there anything that can be done to stop it through a forestry case? That's kind of it, isn't it? Does anyone know?
Can I just clarify, Clary, is it in the local development plan, the future local development plan, the 22 one? The rezoning.
I haven't noticed that, but I'm a bit confused because it says in the plan from what I've seen so far that the green belt, you can't actually build on the green belt, but it was a green belt. So I don't know why they're...
You can.
So from the vast experience that I gained from Tuesday from the Planning Climate Cafe, if there is there's a presumption for development. So what is the most important thing is if the local development plan has what it says against that piece of land. If it says it's allowed to be developed, then you're pretty much stuffed when it comes to actually trying to disallow any kind of developments that are put forward that meet the criteria. So it all depends whether in the local development plan that piece of land has been rezoned to be for development. Because even though they say that no greenfield should be used, that we should protect the greenland, that is completely and utterly not abided by as far as I can see in a vast amount of cases. So it all boils down to if it's in the local development plan as able to be developed, then it's a really, really tough battle and probably unwinnable to go against any sort of reasonable proposals put in on that land, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay, that's unfortunate, but thanks for letting me know.
Does anyone else want to add anything to that? Because I mean, Gareth already said earlier that if it's in the plans, that forest those trump any forestry concerns. Is that's
Yeah. So if it's approved planning, it effectively trumps our sort of permission system for felling trees. The only so I can't really comment on it specifically, but there is a duty of care, or sort of duty of care. Under the Forestry and Land Scotland Act 2018, there is a specific part of that puts the onus on local authorities, public bodies, that they must promote sustainable forestry. So I suppose from a legislative point of view, that's always something that should be considered when planning has gone through.
okay. Thanks very much, everyone. John Hitchcock has got a question for Gareth. So Don't go anywhere, Gareth. John, are you there?
Yes, yeah, I am. I just unmute. It's just a quick one, Gareth, just to get contact names. We're kicking off. We're this month hopefully purchasing a patch of land for our forest out at Colliston. I don't know if you know Colliston up near Ellen. And we're in the early phases of planning a community woodland there. So Alan, watch out, we'll be knocking on your door soon as well. But also Gareth, who's the best contact in the forestry side on discussing options, both on funding and on putting that together, and how we can build the best forest that can attract some good funding, but give us a longer term plan as a community level. We want to do it ourselves rather than get a machine in and do it and it's all done sort of thing.
So from our point of view, best place to start is your local conservancy office. That's what we call our sort of regional offices. So for Aberdeenshire, that area, there's it's near Huntly.
It's
You'll
James
find the
Knott.
details.
The
James
guy's
Knott's the
James Knott.
conservator, yeah. So he's a conservator, but one of the local woodland officers will hopefully be able to have a chat with you about these kind of things. You can find the details of all our regional offices on our website. And another group that you may be interested to speak to are the Woodland Trust. They actually run their own grant scheme as well. So they might be worth having a chat with. They've got some advisors that might be helpful as well.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you very much. Head that route.
And I see, Nigel, you put something on the chat saying you've got many of the same questions. Are you okay? Did you get the answer you wanted, Nigel?
Could I just briefly speak?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, we have a really big kind of broad project that encompasses a lot of elements of the natural environment, but it's also to do with cultural arts and trying to develop out of a kind of frustration because of COVID-19 and me and many people being musicians, performing artists, and there are one or two people here at this meeting who'll know this, about developing outdoor performance space, looking at a very holistic kind of view. What we are actually about to be proposing formally, and we're going to have a meeting with the council for a kind of exploratory meeting, although we've got written proposal stuff, is to actually develop this thing that we're terming at the moment, although we haven't got a brand for it, a linear park, which is actually to re-green the grass verge of Abbey Road. Now, there's more to it than just sort of re-greening it, because it's the margin on a 4-acre piece of land, which is wasteland, which is not used and is rented by a large corporation. And we've got lots of issues about just how we're going to cultivate, we're going to vegetate this fence along the road. It's like a 200-meter length of road. There's lots of issues about, talking to people like John and Forestry Commission and Alan about what species we should be planting there, although we do have a landscape designer working on it. But also a lot of legal issues about the land, and also really our mounting campaign about fighting for the green space in Torry generally. So I just wanted to sort of raise that we're launching this project, and we obviously are seeking advice from all sorts of people at all sorts of levels, and we are looking for community support, and we've got novel plans about how to do that, and actually we're making moves to do that already. So really that's all I wanted to say about it. So if anyone wants to understand that, I certainly talk to me, because I'm kind of team leading that project.
How would anyone talk to you, Nigel? Did you put a contact in the chat?
Yeah, by email, by
put it in the chat.
Mobile. Yeah, I'll put it down. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alison, I don't think I've got any more questions. So
that's fine. What I will say is that thank you to everyone for coming, and thank you to all of our wonderful speakers. I did put something in the chat in relation to feedback, and I'm just going to pop that back in the chat, and let's hope that I don't actually put myself off at that point. But there we go. Yeah, it's in and I haven't been muted. If everyone could put their feedback back in that would be fantastic for us to learn and grow from for our next events. And I just would like to say again that we're part of, this event is part of Climate Week Northeast. And please do look at the other events that are going on. There's tons of them, and there's a lot on forestry and community green spaces. And also just like Aberdeen Climate Action's Facebook page or social media, because we will be putting on more events like that, like our MSP MP event in April as well. So do give us as much feedback as you can, and come along to many more events during Climate Week. And we have recorded this, so if you want to listen to it again, it will be going up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. And there's lots of emails and stuff. If you want to save the chat, you can do that just by clicking on your thing there. And it's the 3 dots at the bottom of the chat. And thank you to everybody, and just have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye from us. I'm just going to hang on so people can, anybody can save the chat if they want to, basically, and also give people a chance to